Hello and namaste. Welcome to my channel with new video and recipe. It's Epi Diaries. To make a brown roll, we have to understand the ratio of flour. I am using Kraftkorn Flour. You can see the color of Kraftkorn Flour. We are making the brown roll of 1 kg flour. That's why I am using 7:3 ratio of flour. I am using 300 gram of Kraftkorn brown flour and 700 gram refined wheat flour. Kraftkorn flour is a dark flour, so that in the recipe we don't need to add extra dark malt flour to give brown color to the dough. But if you need dark brown color, then you have to add 5 gram of dark malt in 1 kg recipe. Dark malt helps to increase the brown color of the dough. So now, as a raising agent, I am using 10 gram of instant dry yeast. But if you need the bread in a short time period, then at that time you can use the yeast up to 15 gram. Then we have 10 gram of bread improver. It helps to enhance the texture of the bread. Now talking about salt, Kraftkorn flour contains salt. That's why we are using only the 10 gram of salt. But in case your brown flour doesn't contain the salt, then at that time you have to use the 20 gram of salt in 1 kg recipe. And at last, we will use the 550 ml of cold water. First of all, we will mix the dry ingredients. 10 gram of dry yeast, 10 gram of bread improver, 10 gram of salt. Now we will knead the flour in dough mixer. Then at last we will add water. Now we will start the machine. For the first 3 minutes we will knead the dough in 1 speed. Only after 3 minutes we will increase the speed. Now before changing the speed, we will check the dough. The dough is perfect, so we don't need to add extra flour and water in the recipe. Now again start the machine. Now we will increase the speed. Talking about the flour, if the flour is old, then it will absorb little bit more water as compared to the new flour. Within 9 minutes, the dough slowly starts to roll on the bottom of the barrel. Then kneading the dough is completed. When the dough is nicely mixed, spread little bit of flour, then remove the dough from the machine. Now place the dough on the working table. Now we will make the ball to keep the dough for the first resting. The next way to know how the dough is perfectly kneaded, when the dough is elastic and transparent, then we can know that kneading the dough is perfect. Now it's the time to keep the dough for the first resting. You can leave the dough for the resting either on working table or any baking tray. First spread the white flour on the tray and on the top of the dough so that the dough will not get stick on the tray. Then we have to cover the dough to prevent the dough from drying. The time duration for the first resting is 20 to 30 minutes. The reason why we keep the dough for the first resting are it helps to develop gluten structure and helps to create the flavor in the dough. Ensure that your dough is nicely covered. The first resting is done. We can see that the dough is light and airy, and little bit size of the dough also increase. Again, we have to keep the dough for the second resting. Again, make a ball. Spread white flour and cover the dough. The duration for the second resting will be around 30 minutes. The reason for the second resting are, it helps to make a working with the dough very easy and it helps to create very lighter and airy texture. When the second resting is done, We can see small air bubble on the dough. This is because of chemical reaction of the yeast inside the dough. Now we have to portion the dough. The total weight of the dough will be 1600 gram of 1 kg recipe. So we will cut the dough in equal to half. If we are using our hand to roll the dough, then we have to roll the dough, then cut 30 gram of dough for making the brown roll. For rolling the dough, we have to use the top part of our finger and bottom part of our palm. From the top part of our finger, we will pull the dough, and from the bottom part, we will push the dough. Then we have to keep rolling the dough in circular motion. Now look the rolling of the dough both sides. It is nicely and perfectly rolled. Then we have to repeat the same technique for all remaining dough. From 1 kg recipe, we can make around 50 pieces of bread roll. Also we have next alternative option for rolling the dough. We can use the dough cutter machine for rolling. First of all, we have to set the number of rolling on the machine. Then only we have to cut the dough. This is dough cutting plate. First, we have to spread a little water on it. Then take a dough, then spread it evenly and equally in all sides. Now place the dough on the plate, then start pressing and expanding the dough. Be sure that your dough is spread equally in all sides. Then spread the white flour. Now we have to place it inside the machine. This is lock. It helps to hold the plate during the cutting time. Now we have to press the dough. Then it's a time for cutting the dough. Then we have to roll the dough for the 5 seconds in the machine. Now you can see the rolling of the dough. This is nicely and perfectly rolled from the both sides. Now it's a time for arranging the dough on the baking tray. Maintain the little bit of gap between the dough, because while proving, the dough will get expanded. So to prevent the dough from touching each other, we have to maintain the distance between the dough. The remaining, we will make the bread with topping. I am using quicker oats as a topping for the bread. To perform topping, we have to spread water so that the dough will catch the topping very nicely. Then we have to repeat the same task for all remaining dough. Now it's the time to keep the dough for the proving inside the prover machine. The best temperature for the bread for the proving is between 27 degrees Celsius to 34 degrees Celsius. The time for the proving depends on the quantity of yeast used in a dough. If you use 10 gram of yeast in a recipe, then it takes more time to prove as compared to the 15 gram of yeast used in a recipe. So it may take between 1 to 2 hours for the proper proving of the bread. After 45 minutes, we can see that the dough is half proved. So now we will take the tray outside the prover. To know the bread is half proved, when we press the dough is coming into its real position. The dough is not pressed inside. As we can see that the dough is not too light and airy. It's up to you whether you want to keep mark or scoring on the bread or not. If you don't want to cut your bread, then it is not necessary to take out the bread in between the proving time. You can keep the dough inside the prover till the dough gets completely proved. Now here, for the half, we will give the scoring on the bread. For scoring the bread, first we have to spread the white flour. Always use new and clean blade for scrolling. any design and cut you can give to your bread. At this time, I will show you the cut very slowly. But in real, you have to give very sharp and quick cut. When you move your blade very slow, then the cut will not be good like you want. So while scoring, always move your blade very fast and quick. Now finally, you can see the cut of the bread. Now again, we will keep the dough inside the prover or the complete proving. Now after half an hour, we will check the proving of the dough. Now we can see that the cut is very nicely opened. When we toss the dough, you can feel the dough is very soft and light. Always remember that for the hard roll, we never perform the egg wash. We just provide them a steam while baking. Now let's keep the bread inside the preheated oven. We will bake the brown hard roll in two different temperatures. For the first baking, we will bake the brown roll for the 10 minutes with 8 seconds steam at 230 degrees Celsius. Now it is almost 10 minutes. So now it's the time for second baking. Now let's reduce the temperature at 210 degrees Celsius. Then we will bake the brown roll for the 5 minutes. Then turn on exhaust fan of the oven. Five-minute baking of the brown roll is done. Now it's the time to take out the bread from the oven. We can see that the brown roll is nicely colored and the brown rolls with the cut and oats looks very nice. So mostly brown roll are consumed during the breakfast with tea and coffee. But you can enjoy the brown roll with cheese as well. You can make a sandwich of brown roll also. As we know that during lunch, dinner and snack, we can enjoy the brown hard roll.